Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Waring of Full Moon Wares. Thank you so much for joining me and crafting along with my Let's Make Spun Cotton Spiders tutorial. In this video, you will learn traditional techniques to create your own spooky and whimsical spun cotton spiders, perfect for Halloween. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, sign up for my newsletter, or visit my Full Moon Wear shop. You'll find all of the links in the video description below. To accompany this video, I've created a curated kit of supplies that includes everything you need to create 12 spiders, just like the ones we're making today. This is what the kit looks like when you get it, and it does have everything you need inside. The kits are available now on my website, and you can find that link in the video description below. Now I'm going to talk about the contents of the kit, and we'll start with the photo card. This is just an image of some of the spiders that I've made in the past, and will give you an idea of what your finished spiders will look like and how you might like to display them. There are two different types of wire in the kit, and they both come pre-cut. We have the 1/8 inch thick cotton chenille pipe cleaners, as well as a 26 gauge black paper covered floral wire. To create our spiders, we'll be using brown cotton sliver, and that will come inside of this hand-dyed muslin storage pouch. And to finish the spiders, I've included some real black German glass glitter as well as some black crepe paper. That's everything that comes in the kit. Now I'm going to talk about some of the tools and supplies that you'll want to have on hand to complete the project. First of all, I want to point out that I've gone ahead and taped a piece of parchment paper down to my work surface to protect it. We will be working with glue and paint, so you might like to do something similar. We're going to need to make some measurements. So for that, I have just a basic 12-inch ruler, and I have a white pencil and a black marker for marking the measurements. Any pen or pencil will do if you don't have these. You'll need a pair of wire cutters for trimming the spider's legs and the armature. And we'll be using glue a few times throughout the project. So I have a plain white school glue or PVA glue straight out of the bottle. And you're going to use this same glue to create your glue wash. The recipe for the glue wash is 1 part white glue to 4 parts hot water. And you'll need to stir that up until it's well mixed. And that's what I have in this little pot here. You'll also need a paintbrush to apply it. And what I like is a wide flat brush. This is a number 10 filbert tip brush. And lastly, you'll need something to dry your pieces on. So I have an oven-proof enamel tray with another piece of parchment paper on it. I do like to dry my spun cotton pieces in my kitchen oven. So if you like to do that as well, you're going to need something that's heat proof. And I also have a little cup here to dry them upright. So after we spin them and apply the glue wash, you can place them in this cup, and the same thing for the paint. The cup is oven proof as well, so this can also go right in my oven to speed up the drying process. That's everything you need to make your spiders. Now let's get started. This is step 1, and in this step we'll be making the legs for our spiders. At the end of the step, you'll have something that looks like this. It's a neat little bundle of 4 pieces of wire held together in the center with a tiny piece of crepe paper. To make a spider like the ones we're making today, you're going to need 4 pieces of wire per spider, and each piece should be 3.5 inches long. So that's the size that I use to make all the spiders that you see here. The wire that we're using for our spider legs today is a 26 gauge black paper covered floral wire. And to make one spider, you'll need to cut the wire into 4 pieces that are 3.5 inches long. If you purchase the kit, the wires came pre cut. So, what we need to do now is to take 4 wires per spider and we're going to measure the center. You don't need to measure if you'd like, you can just kind of eyeball it, but it does help if you line them all up and then mark the centers. And to mark them, I like to use a white pencil or you could use a white paint marker. It shows up nicely on the black wire. And I'm trying to roll the wires around so I get a little bit of white pencil on all the sides. That way it'll be easier to see. Okay, so I've marked that. To join them together, we're going to use a piece of black crepe paper, and this crepe paper is about a 1/4 inch wide. I have used ribbon for this, like a thin piece of silk ribbon or another kind of paper, even floral tape. But I really like using the crepe paper because it has some stretch to it and that helps create nice, tight little bundles. One drawback of the crepe paper is that the dye is very strong that they dye crepe paper with, so it will get some color on your hands a little bit. To attach that to the legs, we're going to use some white glue. This is just plain white glue straight out of the bottle. And you're going to need to pick up your 4 little legs and start by putting just a dot of glue right where you mark the center. And I'm kind of making sure that I get it on all sides there. Now we're going to take the crepe paper and put it right on the dot of glue and leave a little tail that's maybe like a 1/4 of an inch and fold that over, squeeze it together. And now we're going to put a little bit more glue on this side. We won't need this whole long piece. We're going to tear most of that off. And you can see it's getting on my fingers. So now we're just going to spin it around a few times and maybe go around 4 or 5 times to create your bundle. Once you get to the end where you applied the glue, you can just tear that right off. It tears really easily. And then I'm going to continue rolling this gently in my fingers just to make sure I got a nice tight wrap. And this is everything that you need to do to make one set of spider legs. Now we really need to let this dry before we go on to the next step. And at this point, I do want to mention that you might see that some of your legs are a little longer than other ones. Don't try to cut it right now. You don't really want to disturb it when the glue is wet. So once this dries, we can trim it down in a later step. This is step 2, and in this step, we'll be spinning the body of our spiders. To create the body of the spiders, we're going to be using one of the most basic foundational techniques of spun cotton, which involves wrapping cotton around a wire armature. The armature that we're using is really just a straight piece of wire. It's really simple. And the wire that we're using today is a piece of pipe cleaner that's cut 4 inches long. This is a 1/8 inch thick cotton covered pipe cleaner. This is a simple technique, but once you learn it, it can allow you to make many different things. I'm going to show you another example of a piece that I made a few years ago using the same method. So this is a salamander, and inside is just a wire armature, just like here. You'll have a piece of pipe cleaner running through here, like a wire skeleton, and even on the tiny toes, there's wire inside of that. So this guy was made with the same technique that we're going to be using to make the spiders today. The cotton that we're using to create our spiders today is this brown cotton sliver. This is a naturally brown cotton, so this is the color that it grows. It's cleaned and then combed into a long rope. And I really like working with the brown cotton because it has a really nice rough texture and it does spin really easily. It has long fibers that are nice and rough, so they grip to each other really well. And it's not going to be silky with little pieces flying off everywhere. This is a great one to work with for something like this. I also like to use a darker color cotton like the brown for anything that I'm going to be painting a dark color. So since these will be black, it's really nice to start with a base of brown underneath. And that's the same thing that I did with this salamander. You can see in some of the areas the brown cotton coming through. Now, the shape that we're making is almost like a little light bulb upside down or sort of like a mushroom. It's a really simple shape, and we're going to spin it all in one long piece. And to get started with that, we're going to need to take off 10 inches of the brown cotton. So I have a ruler and I'm just going to pull it right off of this ball of cotton, approximately 10 inches. Now, once we've done that, this is much too thick to spin a spider. So we're going to tear off little strands of it. And one 10-inch piece should be able to divide into six. So you can make six spiders out of one 10-inch piece. And the width that we need is something like this. So you just gently coax it away, and then you'll have a strand like this. And you should be able to get five more strands like that out of this piece. To make the spiders, we're going to be spinning a half an inch onto the wire. And 4 inches is really a lot longer than you need, but it really helps to have a little handle when you're making these to hold on to. And then when you're drying them, you can see I put mine in this little pot here that will allow it to stick out of the top and dry. So I'm going to measure a half an inch on this pipe cleaner here. And that'll give you a good idea of where to start and stop your cotton. I'm just using a thin point black permanent marker for that. Now that I have that measured out, we can start spinning. Today, we're going to be working with just a simple white glue wash while we spin our cotton. And this glue wash is the white school glue or PVA glue. So it's 1 part white glue and 4 parts hot water. You're going to need to make this ahead of time if you haven't already. You can absolutely use a vegetable starch based glue for this project as well if you prefer. So I've marked out the half an inch there, and here's our piece of cotton. The first thing that I like to do is to wet this with a little bit of the glue wash. And I'm just going to go up to right where we marked. And then I'm going to pick up the strand of cotton and I'm going to start basically right on the mark. So we're going to be spinning the larger section of the spider first, which is the abdomen. And we're going to start by adhering the cotton like that, pinching it a little bit so it's nice and tight on the wire. And we're just going to start spinning around a few times. And you'll notice I'm spinning it with this hand. And with this hand, I'm kind of feeding the cotton onto the pipe cleaner and I'm pinching gently with these 2 fingers. So I get a nice tight spin. I'm going to go around a few times in the same area until we build up this to about half the final thickness. Now, at this point, I'm going to travel down towards the tip of the wire and we're going to spin the head section. Before we do that, we need to take our cotton and just tug gently, and that'll separate the strands right here so you won't have a big bulky bump between the two sections. You might be able to see what that looks like. I thinned it out a little bit. So if you're going to go from section to section, it's very helpful to thin out the fibers before you do that. So now that I've done that, it's ready to travel down to the tip of the wire, and we're going to spin the entire head. And it really doesn't need to be that big. Each one is a little bit different. So we have something like that. That's good enough for the head. And again, we're going to travel back that direction now. So we need to thin out the fibers very gently. Now, if yours tears when you do that, you can just pick it back up and start up here. It's not really a big deal if it tears. Now I'm going to go back to the abdomen again, and I'm going to finish out this 10-inch piece. If you like the size of yours and you still have some cotton, you can just tear it off and get rid of the extra. But I'm going to finish it out, and I'm spinning with this hand again. And now you can see that I'm kind of spinning against these fingers. I'm cradling it in my fingers there and shaping it. And another way to shape it with your fingers is just to pull it down. This will round out the bottom a little bit. And always make sure that you're spinning in the direction that you applied the cotton. If you start going the other direction, the cotton will unravel. So you'll have something that looks like this. And now all you need to do is to apply some glue wash. You can also kind of shape and sculpt your spider with the glue wash and the brush a little bit. If you're not really happy with the shape, if you have kind of a pointier head than you want, you can just press down on that. And I'm going to put this in my little cup that I like to dry them in. The way that I like to dry my spun cotton pieces is in my oven at 225 degrees. And for something this small with such a small amount of glue wash, it will really only take a minute or two. So you can dry yours like that, or you can just let it dry naturally. If you have a food dehydrator, you can dry it in there as well. Now I'm going to show you one more of those because that is basically the most difficult part of the project. And here's the piece of cotton that I had again. I'm going to take another little piece off, pick up a pipe cleaner, and I'm just going to mark out what I think is a half an inch. You can use your ruler if you want. And I'll do this one more time for you. So this is the spinning part. Now, it does help to wet the pipe cleaner a little bit first. And I'm going to place the cotton onto the pipe cleaner right where I made the mark, pinch it a little bit just to get it started. And then I'm going to start spinning with this hand. And with this hand, I'm feeding the cotton up. And you'll notice that my cotton is sort of in a flat ribbon rather than twisted up like this. If it's twisted up, it's not going to go on smoothly. So what you are looking for is sort of a smooth, flat ribbon of cotton. And again, I'm going to go around a few times until I have that about half the final thickness. That looks good. And now I'm going to gently tug to thin that area out. I'm going to go around a little bit more here. And then when I start to feel the thin area, travel down to the head. And I'm spinning with this hand, applying the gentle pressure with these two fingers. I should mention too, if at any point it helps you to add just a tiny bit of glue wash while you're spinning, you can do that. It does help secure the fibers a little bit. The one drawback on that with a white glue wash is that it can get a bit sticky. If you're using vegetable starch glue, it's not sticky. So that is a positive of the vegetable starch glue. Okay, so the head is about the size that I want it to be, and I've thinned out the fibers. Now I'm going to go back towards the abdomen and make sure that my ribbon of cotton is still wide and flat. Keep spinning, and even though I've reached the end, I'm still spinning. Now I'm going to kind of cradle it in my fingers again. Now I'm pulling down on the wire and resting the cotton against my fingers there to smooth and shape it. You can see what that looks like. Now I'm going to add the glue wash again. This one has a little string of cotton coming off of the top. I would just leave that for now. You can try to blend it in with the glue wash if you like, or in a later step, once it's totally dry, you can cut it off. I don't like to try to tug off any loose fibers until I've put glue wash and completely dried the piece. Okay, so here's another one that's ready to dry. And I'm going to put this with the others, put it in my kitchen oven at 225 degrees for just a few minutes or until it's completely dry. This is step 3, and in this step, we'll be painting our spiders. At the end of the step, you'll have something that looks like this, and I've just chosen to paint my spiders black and do two tiny little dots of golden yellow for the eyes. So now I'm going to show you how I do that. These are the dried spider bodies that we were working on in the last step, and I'm going to get started painting them. The paint that I'm using today is actually acrylic paint. It's black acrylic craft paint mixed with water. So, what I have is about one part black paint and one part water. Normally, I like to paint my spun cotton pieces with watercolor paint, and I will be using watercolor for the eyes today. You could absolutely use watercolor for the body, but for this project, I do find it easier to just use a black acrylic paint. Black is kind of tough with watercolor. You need to apply a lot of layers. So this is just one solid color. I think the acrylic works really well for this. So again, that's watered down, one part water and one part paint. And you really just need a light coat. And you can get fancy and intricate if you want to make some designs on your spider. But what I'm doing is just covering the whole thing with a little bit of the black paint wash and then putting it in my tray to dry. And I'm going to do another one here. Same thing. You're going to want to make sure that you get all around the pipe cleaner, and we're leaving the pipe cleaner on for now. You can see that it's a really handy thing to have because you can hold on to it, helps keep your hands clean, and makes it easier for you to paint and work with the spiders in general. We'll just do this last one. Before we paint any details on the spider body, today we're just going to be painting eyes. But if you wanted to paint any details, you do want to let the first coat dry. So then I have three here that have dried already. And to do the eyes, I'm going to use some watercolor paint. So I don't have any yellow acrylic paint, so I'm just going to use this yellow watercolor. And to make the eyes, I'm going to be using this, which is a nail art dotter, or it's like a tiny clay tool. Some people use it for polymer clay. And it just is basically like a pointy nail with a little round ball on the end. You can paint them on by hand with a small paintbrush. You could use a watercolor pencil to draw the eyes on. You could use a paint pen. A gel pen works well to draw on spun cotton. Or you can even use like a little piece of wire to dot the eyes on. Anything with a little round tip works well for this method. So I'm just going to use some plain water and wet this nice bright yellow paint I have here. And then pick one up. Now, what I'm going to do is decide where I want the eyes to go. So you may have a part where it doesn't look as good as one side, or there's a strand coming down. You will want that to be the underneath of your spider. So you can look and determine right now what part you want to be the top of your spider, and that's where you're going to put the eyes. So look kind of like what looks the best shape wise, and with your general spin, if you have any little stray pieces, you might want to put them underneath. So I'm just going to use the daughter and tap it in the yellow paint. And these are really tiny, so it's probably going to be hard to see. But that's all I do is just make one little dot. I keep it simple for these. I think the impact with the spiders is seeing kind of a lot of them together far away. But if you did want to make a more detailed, intricate one, you absolutely could. I've made some in the past that I've painted really intricately and put them in a glass cloche with a spun cotton mushroom. Okay, so this is all you need to do to paint the spider. This one has eyes. I'm going to add him to this. And we need to let that dry completely before we go on to the next step. This is step 4, and in the step, we'll be attaching the legs to the painted spiders. At the end of the step, you're going to have something that looks like this. So you can see this is the painted spider that's dry, and then I've attached the legs on the back here, and this is also dried completely. Now, the glue that we're going to be using again is the white school glue or PVA glue. I've tried several different types of glue for this: hot glue, super glue. But I just keep coming back to the white glue. I have found that the other glues don't work as well at all. It's really hard to get them to stick. So the white school glue works best for this project. Before you attach your legs to your spider, you might want to check and make sure that they're all equal length. So you can see some of mine are a little longer than others. We can absolutely trim them later also when we're finishing our spider up. But if you want to right now, you can go ahead and do that. So I just have a little wire cutter here and I'm going to trim off the extra pieces. And you can also check to see if your crepe paper is in the center. And if one side looks a lot shorter than the other side, you can trim it so the sides match. Okay, so that's something you may want to do ahead of time. Now that the bundle is dry, you can safely trim the legs without worrying about ripping this. Okay, so to attach them to the spider, you want to make sure that you have the eyes facing up. So, like this. And I found that if you make a little cut underneath here between the two segments of the bodies, you can kind of insert the legs in there, and that does make it a lot sturdier. You don't have to do that. You can just glue them right on. But what I like to do is look where I put the eyes and then underneath just make a little snip with the wire cutters. You can use some tiny scissors, like embroidery scissors, for that as well. And then you can kind of open it up just a bit. You'll start to see the brown cotton. And then I'm going to use a little paintbrush and put a generous dab of glue there. And now I'm going to take the bundle of wires and kind of insert it into that opening that I made and kind of press it shut a bit. Now I'm going to use the paintbrush and just add a little bit more glue to make sure that there's glue covering that whole area. So this is what it looks like. You really need to make sure that this is completely dry before you do anything else with it. So that can take a few minutes. At this point, you may want to go ahead and do the rest of your spiders while you wait. This is step 5, and in this step, we'll be finishing the spiders. Now that the spiders have dried from the last step and the legs are attached, we're ready to finish them up. And the first thing that we're going to need to do now is to remove the pipe cleaner. So it's time to do that finally. We can take our wire cutters and just snip that right off. And you will see that it does leave a little exposed piece of the pipe cleaner and cotton. And I have the paint here. If you want to touch it up, you can do that. Okay, so that one's off, and I'm going to do this one also. Same thing. I'm kind of cutting at a little angle following the shape of the abdomen. And that one has the same thing. Sometimes if you paint it and your paint soaks through all the way, you won't see any of that. It will already be black. But if you do have that, you can just touch it up like that. Now we want to decide how we want to pose the spider. So we're going to separate the legs. And you can kind of see which leg is in the front if you look closely at the wires. Some of them will be naturally in the back just because of the way you bundled them. So there's 4 on that side, and I'm going to unfold these legs. Here we go. And there's any kind of pose that you can imagine that a spider would be in. You can pose this however you like. If you want to trim your legs shorter, you can absolutely do that. I like to just bend them at the knees a bit and bend them back like that. So this would be a spider that would be kind of standing like one of these here or one of the ones on the table. Once you have the legs bent, if you want to trim any of them, if you think one looks too long, you can do that. But this is how to make the standing spider. And now I'm going to show you how to finish them with the glitter if you want to have something a little more detailed. You can see these two here have a little bit of black glass glitter on the abdomen. And here is the spider that we're working on. I'm just going to do the same thing with the legs. Really, you can put these in any position you want. They work really well with the faux spider webs. They're a lot cuter than the plastic ones that come with it normally, I think. And I'm just going to bend the legs, same as I did with the last one. If it helps you, you can look at some pictures of spiders if you like to see how they stand naturally. Okay. And at any point, really, you could put the glitter on. You could put it on before you bend the legs. I kind of like to put it on after, just so I can see what the spider looks like before I put the glitter on. So to put the glitter on, I have it poured out in this little dish here, and I'm just going to use a little bit of the white glue. And I like to put a little coating on the abdomen with the white glue and then just sprinkle some of that on and tap it off. So there's a nice glittered one. If you decide to use the glitter, you're going to want to wait for the glitter to dry completely before you use it in any decorating. So here are some of our finished spiders. And this is the end of the project. We've reached the end of our project and our spun cotton spiders are finished. I hope that you've learned some new techniques and enjoyed our time crafting together. I would love to see what you make. Please share your creations on social media and tag me at Full Moon Wears. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more spun cotton projects. And before you go, keep watching for a short preview of my other kits and tutorials available from Full Moon Wears. Thanks again, and happy Halloween.